Hey guys, tonight we sneak through moonlit olive groves, where not even the wind dares to rustle the trees too loudly, somewhere between myth and nap. Tucked in the folds of forgotten parchment is a story no war god once told, a tale of silence, slippers, and one of the strangest combat schools the gods ever allowed to exist. You're in ancient Greece, except it's the middle of the night, and you're wearing sandals with padded soles made of lamb's wool, because that's the only way to get close to the school Athena built without being heard. The air smells like baked earth and old parchment. Somewhere in the distance, an owl hoots, but the sound is barely more than a whisper. The grove ahead is darker than the rest. That's where her temple school supposedly stands. No gates, no torches, no signs, just rumor. You were told to find it in silence, or not at all. So, of course, you're here. You trip on a root immediately, and the rustle echoes like thunder in your imagination. So, before you get comfortable, take a moment to like the video and subscribe, but only if you genuinely enjoy what I do here. And hey, let me know where you're listening from and what time it is. I promise Athena won't grade you for it. Now, dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's ease into tonight's journey together. You shuffle forward, hoping no one's watching. Behind a half-burnt olive tree, you see it? A low marble structure woven into the grove itself. Ivy strangles its columns. Moss grows on the goddess's face, but her eyes still gleam. And inside, nothing. No footsteps, no flickering flame, just the scent of ink and wool. You've found Athena's school for extremely quiet warriors. If the rumors are true, historians still argue whether Athena ever trained her own soldiers outside Olympus. Most myths cast her as a distant tactician, armored, composed, unmoved. But a recently uncovered fragment of a vase in Delphi shows a hooded figure, possibly Athena, teaching a group of humans to march silently across reeds. One archaeologist called it the ancient world's first ninja school and was immediately uninvited from further conferences. You push the door open silently. Surprisingly, and inside is more library than barracks. Low cots, clay shelves lined with scrolls titled things like Tactics in Toe-Point Form and Cushioned Aggression. You walk past rows of practice dummies made of stitched linen. One is labeled Enemy General. Waking up, another, distracted but alert horse. Someone clearly took their stealth simulations seriously. There are no windows, just lanterns with darkened glass, flickering so softly it's almost imaginary. And there in the center, not on a throne, but seated on a woven mat, with a bronze teacup balanced on one palm. Athena, she doesn't look up, doesn't blink, just waits. You try to bow, but forget how. You half nod, half squat, and nearly lose your balance. Still, she lifts a finger. You've passed the first test. Silence. There's something oddly reassuring about her presence. Not strict, not soft, just focused. She gestures once, and a panel on the floor slides open. A scroll rises slowly, as if embarrassed. You open it. There's one rule: no sound above a bee's wing. Easy, right? Until you remember how loud your knees crack every time you sit. That's when a door opens behind you without sound. Of course, and another student arrives. Then another. Soon there are 20 of you, all standing in awkward silence while Athena slowly pours steaming liquid into clay cups that smell vaguely of time and melted chalk. She finally speaks, her voice a soft scrape across marble. Words are weapons. Silence is armor. Learn both. And that's it. That's the whole orientation. You sleep on a cot filled with reeds and silence. You dream of owls whispering battle plans into the ears of children. One taps its claw on your forehead and mutters something about footwork. At dawn, or whatever counts as dawn, inside a moss-draped marble box, you're awoken by a scroll landing gently on your chest. Your name isn't written on it. Instead, it just says, "Try not to breathe too loudly today." You fail immediately. Of course, but the others do too. A kid near you hiccups during a stretch. Someone accidentally kicks a broom. And one poor soul lets out a yawn so loud it echoes into next week. You all glance at Athena. She doesn't flinch, but the stone owl on her desk tilts its head. Later that year, someone would try to smuggle out a drawing of the school's layout. The parchment would be blank. Not because it was enchanted, but because the artist was too scared to sketch anything without permission. One mainstream fact: the Greeks did. In fact, Train warriors in silence. Certain phalanx units were taught to communicate only through hand gestures in pre-battle rituals. It wasn't magic, it was strategy. Quiet meant readiness. Quiet meant control. Fringe tidbit. There's a legend of a Spartan who trained by stalking his own shadow for weeks until he could touch it without being seen. Tonight, you start to believe it. You lie back on your reed cot, scroll still on your chest, and listen to the gentle creak of a helmet strap being adjusted 30 feet away. Someone's learning already. Athena is watching, and somehow, without speaking, so are you. The next morning or perhaps mid-afternoon, it's hard to tell without windows. You wake to the sound of absolutely nothing. Not a bird, not a breeze, just the quiet hum of anticipation and the subtle skirt of someone adjusting their tunic too quickly. Today is weapons orientation, which sounds impressive until you realize there's not a single sword clanging, not a single shield gleaming dramatically in the sunlight. Instead, Athena stands beside a long bench lined with the quietest tools ever imagined. Every item looks ordinary until you touch it. You're handed a spear. It's wrapped in soft wool, tip sheathed in polished obsidian, so smooth it reflects nothing. It weighs less than your lunch yesterday. You try to lift it and it doesn't whistle through the air like a warrior's dream. It glides, dead silent. Even your grip is muffled by its goat leather handle. You swing it slowly, and it feels like slicing through milk. Athena walks between students. She doesn't lecture. She doesn't correct anyone aloud. She simply observes, eyes narrowed like a hawk watching its own dream. When someone's grip is off, she tilts her head. When another steps too loudly, her eyebrow lifts. If you do especially well, she rewards you by not reacting at all. Next, sandals. You are given your official combat slippers. They're hideous, flat, soft-soled monstrosities designed less for style and more for total sonic annihilation. You put them on and suddenly feel like a very sneaky grandmother. There's an awkward moment where everyone tests their new gait tiptoeing, like ballet dancers trying to rob a bakery. The floor creaks once under someone's heel, and the entire class flinches like it's thunder. You'll spend hours just practicing how to walk again. Heel, toe. No roll the foot. Roll and absorb. You eventually develop a glide so smooth it feels illegal. Historians still argue whether this silent warfare school was literal or symbolic. Some suggest it was a metaphor for intellectual discipline, stealth as restraint, silence as control. But fragments from a lost strategicon suggest real military techniques such as muffling shield edges with lambskin and dulling arrows for nighttime raids where killing wasn't the point, just creeping around until the enemy gave up in confusion. Meanwhile, back in the school courtyard, someone sneezes. It's not just a sneeze. It's a sneeze the kind with buildup, suspense, and a full-body release. It echoes off the marble walls like a cannonball. Athena turns her head. The offender sinks in shame. A scroll immediately slides from a nearby wall slot that reads, "Begin again." You all go back to the starting line. No one complains. Complaining makes noise. You begin again. Another hour. Another set of tests. You're paired up for dueling stances, not to strike, but to mirror each other's movements in silence. It's part Tai Chi, part interpretive dance, part extremely tense mime routine. A bead of sweat rolls down your temple. It's the loudest thing you've felt all day. Then the real test begins. You're instructed to drop your spear on the ground. No throwing, no slamming, just let it fall. Sounds simple. You fail 3 times. The first fall, a clatter that makes the owl statue squint. The second time, you panic and catch it halfway down, accidentally elbowing your own hip in the process. The third time, a weird bounce off the wool wrapping that knocks someone else's toe. But the fourth, it lands like a sigh, a whisper of a thud, like a falling leaf in a library. Athena nods. You're starting to understand mainstream fact. Ancient Greek warfare did prioritize formations over flashy combat. Hoplites were trained to move as one, shield to shield. Individual flair was less important than cohesion. An early form of military silence, in its way. And here comes your fringe tidbit. One myth mentions a lesser-known demigod, Phylon the soft-footed, who could supposedly sneak into enemy camps, replace their battle plans with menus for lentil soup, and leave without waking a soul. Most historians dismiss him as a joke. Others aren't so sure. A lentil recipe was found on an old Athenian helmet. After all, later in the day, you're led to a small side chamber where students are practicing breathing. Yes, breathing. You sit with a scroll pressed lightly to your chest. If it moves too much, you're told you've failed. There's something vaguely terrifying about being told your own lungs are too noisy. Someone near you gets the hiccups. A scroll nearby unrolls and dramatically erases their name from something. Eventually, you're allowed to leave the chamber. You pass Athena in the hallway. She doesn't say anything. She just hands you a small bronze coin, etched with an owl and a foot. You've passed the day's training. You don't dare ask what the coin is for. But the rumor is, if you collect 7, you get a nap without supervision. A rare and sacred gift. You walk back to your cot, testing your foot roll. Quiet, balanced, steady. You look at your new spear. It looks back. You think it winked. But maybe that's just fatigue. And as you lie down, no creaks, no sighs. You wonder, how many other warriors failed out of this school simply because their joints cracked? The 3rd day, or maybe the 5th. Time is sort of a rumor here begins with a single note, not music, just a drawn-out hum from somewhere inside the walls. Everyone wakes at once, like startled but very polite birds. Today is enrollment day evaluations. You and the rest of the students are escorted without words, of course, into a circular room where the floor is made of soft sand, not dramatic arena-style sand, but very fine. Beige dust that makes your ankles feel insecure. A set of low cushions circle the space, and Athena stands in the center, balancing a scroll on the tip of her spear like she's auditioning for a very nerdy circus. Each student's name is revealed by releasing a dove. That dove lands on your shoulder. That's how you know it's your turn. Yours lands. You stand. You bow. The dove sneezes. You are now spiritually bonded forever. Your test is to walk a spiral path inward laid out with olive stones without shifting the sand enough to disturb the pattern. It is an exercise in weight, breath, and not thinking about lunch. You make it halfway before your slipper skids on a grape stem someone left behind. You recover with grace. Athena nods. Next, posture testing. This involves balancing a scroll on your head while mimicking the movements of a fighting crane. Not a metaphorical crane, a literal one. There's a bird in the room, wearing a tiny bronze tag labeled Dennis. He flaps. You flap. He bows. You bow. He hisses. You do not hiss back. That's a trap. Historians still argue whether real animals were ever used in military drills, especially inside temples. Some believe the Greeks revered animal mimicry as sacred the way a crane's movement mirrored spear play. Others suspect these accounts were poetic exaggerations or, in the case of Dennis, pure mythological mischief. Still, you pass. Barely. Then comes the hardest test of all, stillness. You are instructed to stand motionless while Athena walks a full circle around you. You may not twitch. You may not blink dramatically. You may not scratch. One poor soul breaks into a sweat halfway through and sneezes 3 times. He is gently relocated to retraining. Fringe tidbit. Ancient inscriptions suggest some cults of Athena practiced wind fasting, where participants tried to reduce their breath to a whisper for purification. It's likely nonsense, but it might also explain why the school has no cheese on the menu. Back in your room, you are given your first personal scroll. It contains 3 questions. How loudly does a sword speak? If an enemy falls and no one hears it, did you win? Why did Dennis glare at you like that? There are no correct answers, only better silences. You write your responses using ink made from crushed olive pits. The quill makes a soft scratching noise you try to muffle with your sleeve. Someone beside you is writing with such stealth, you think they're using telepathy. That evening, there's a group non-discussion. You all gather by the reflecting pool again, more puddle than pool, and stare at your reflections in silence. It's a bonding exercise. Every now and then, someone giggles and immediately looks like they regret everything they've ever done. You resist the urge to yawn. Then, from the shadows, Athena speaks. She doesn't raise her voice, doesn't project. She simply begins. War has 2 faces. One is made of bronze, the other of wool. The silence after that line feels louder than thunder. You're not entirely sure what it means, but you feel like you should go embroider it on something. She disappears before you can blink, just gone, like a thought slipping through a dream. That night, You attempt the scroll balancing pose in your sleep. You wake up face down with papyrus stuck to your cheek and Dennis watching through the window like he owns the place. Mainstream fact. Athenian academies were notoriously quiet, especially those dealing with logic and warcraft. Students were taught to speak only when spoken to think before every movement, and to study the art of calm response seen as divine poise. You lie on your cot, rereading your scroll responses. You're not sure you got the second question right. If your opponent falls and no one hears it, did you win? Maybe not. Maybe you just tripped them. Maybe victory is quieter than you expected. You hear a rustle outside. Someone drops their spoon. The owl statue blinks once, then turns to face the wall. Its version of disappointment. You close your eyes, wondering if you'll dream of fighting in slow motion again, or if Dennis will start showing up in your subconscious, judging your posture. He probably will. You wake up to the gentle crunch of sand being raked. It's training day. 4 or week 1 or month 8. Who knows? And the courtyard has been transformed into something between a battlefield and a meditative Zen garden. Rows of soft sand spiral out in patterns so delicate, even breathing too hard makes them blur. Your task: combat drills at 1/10 speed in complete silence. On top of this sand, easy, until you realize how loud your knees are when they bend. Each student is paired with another. You face off like two extremely polite ghosts, preparing for an interpretive dance-off. The first movement is a bow, the second a raised spear, the third a slow, painfully slow swing toward your opponent's hip. Not to strike, just to threaten. The key is restraint, and not tripping over your own feet. Athena stands off to the side, perched on what appears to be a marble pigeon coop, watching with her usual expression, mild interest, deep judgment, subtle encouragement, fringe tidbit. A translated scroll from Epidaurus once described a mirror fight exercise used to train soldiers in controlled response. The twist. The scroll says participants fought using imaginary blades and vibrational rhythm, which might just mean they flailed in sync until someone gave up. Or it was ancient interpretive mime combat. Historians remain divided. Anyway, back to the sand. You glide. You pivot. You freeze mid-strike when a squirrel launches itself across the courtyard and scurries up the olive tree with enough noise to trigger a full-body flinch from everyone in the class. Someone lets out a startled eep. Athena raises her finger, not in punishment, but in acknowledgement. Because nature, it cheats. You're given a new drill. This one's called the Step of the Snail. It involves slowly walking across the garden without disturbing the sand, while balancing a wooden bowl filled with lentils on your head. And oh yes, your opponent is trying to do the same. Walking toward you from the opposite side, you meet in the middle like very stressed statues about to bow at a wedding. You don't make eye contact. You don't blink. You just pass each other and pray that your lentils don't rattle. One falls. You hear it. Athena hears it. The owl hears it. Everyone hears it. Your shame is silent, but crushing. Mainstream fact. Greek hoplites were trained in precision. One misstep in formation could cost lives. Silence wasn't just philosophical, it was tactical. Enemy scouts often used sound to locate advancing troops, so controlling noise became a discipline unto itself. This isn't fantasy, it's logistics. Lunch is served without a word. You sit cross-legged by the fountain, really more of a leaky bowl at this point, and chew silently on boiled barley with an herb paste that tastes like regret. Nobody clinks their bowls. The spoons are wooden, with felt edges. You once saw someone punished for sighing too loudly while tasting stew. The conversation is entirely nonverbal. Raised eyebrows, subtle gestures. One brave student who tries to communicate with eyebrow Morse code and nearly pulls a muscle. You think he was saying pass the lentils or save me. You practice slow-motion spear play for another 2 hours, ending with the reverse turn retreat, which is basically walking backward in formation without kicking anyone in the shin. You fail twice, but the second time, you do it with style, so maybe that counts. Then, the day's final test, sand writing. You're instructed to inscribe a message into the garden with your spear, but without breaking the rake patterns. Your message must be precise, legible, and philosophical. You try to write, "Victory is the sound of nothing," but you run out of space and end up with "Victory is the Sioux," which Athena pauses to consider. She says nothing, but she raises an eyebrow, which might be the school's version of a gold star. Just before sundown, a scroll is delivered to your cot. It reads, "Your left foot betrays you. Be friends with it." You're not sure if it's advice or an insult. Either way, you promise your left foot you'll try harder tomorrow. Fringe fact. A lesser-known sect of Athenian priests once practiced ritual silence during festivals, believing that divine wisdom could only be heard in stillness. They wore sandals lined with fish scales, allegedly to absorb the sound of the earth's complaints. Whether it worked? Unknown. Whether it smelled weird? Definitely. You lie down, exhausted from moving slower than a sleepwalker through molasses. Your cot creaks slightly. The owl statue across the hall turns its head 15 degrees in judgment. You mouth a silent apology. You dream of battling underwater. Every movement is a ripple. Every attack a sigh. You're undefeated mostly because no one can swing fast enough to land a hit. By now, your body has adapted to the quiet. Your heartbeat no longer sounds like a marching drum in your ears. Your footsteps barely register. Even your thoughts feel muffled, less like shouts, more like polite post-it notes, which is exactly the level of discipline Athena demands for today's challenge. Tactical theory. You're ushered into a long, low-ceilinged chamber that smells like wax and dusty olives. Scrolls line the walls, titles in faded ink. Ambush by moonlight. Feather foot. Formations. Siege in slippers. The centerpiece is an enormous parchment pinned to the floor, drawn in soft charcoal lines. A battlefield, but nothing like you've ever seen. It's a village, a grove, a river path, and a kitchen all in one. No terrain features, no enemy forces, just places where noise might happen. It's a map of potential sounds. Athena stands beside it, holding the scroll of muted tactics. A document rumored to contain every stealth maneuver she ever invented but was too embarrassed to share on Olympus. It's rolled up so tightly, it hisses slightly when opened. She begins. No war is ever won by shouting first. You nod. Mostly because everyone else does. She sets you a task. Devise a silent ambush using at least 3 of the scroll's strange items. You open it and your eyebrows do backflips. Among the so-called tools, hollowed-out walnut shells for fake footsteps, a cape stitched with dried moss for rustling camouflage, a decoy owl whistle that only sounds like a real owl if used upside down, clay balls filled with chilled honey, designed to burst silently and make enemies slip. Your team, which includes a kid who never blinks, and someone who once defeated a shadow in slow-motion combat, chooses the walnut shells, honey traps, and moss capes. You assign yourselves roles. You're the sound shepherd. Your job is to create noise somewhere else to lure attention. But only the right kind of noise. Not thunder, not chaos. Just confusing rustles. The simulation begins. You scatter into the paper village. The floor creaks faintly under your feet. You step over a fake well, duck behind a fake goat made of reed and hope, and place your walnut shells carefully behind a broken cart. Then, you hum, just once, low, like a bee who's not trying very hard. Historians still argue whether sound mirage tactics were real in ancient warfare. Some say they were exaggerations, allegorical wisdom passed down by poets. But battlefield accounts from the Peloponnesian War include strange references to phantom flutes, eerie rustling at midnight, and entire armies halted by what they thought was the approach of barefoot giants. Back in the simulation, your walnut shells work perfectly. Athena nods once. Someone on your team slips a honey ball into a soldier dummy's boot. It sticks. The moss cape dancer weaves through the reeds. No one hears her. You win. Or, at least, you don't lose. Which, in a silent war, might be the same thing. After the drill, Athena gives you all a single olive each. Not to eat, just to consider. You carry it back to your room and stare at it for 15 minutes. You feel wiser. You also feel like you've hallucinated a lot of olives recently. Fringe tidbit. Some versions of the Iliad were performed with accompaniment from silent dancers. People who mimed battle poses in slow, fluid gestures behind the speaker. It was meant to honor the unspoken suffering of war, but most audiences just called it the weird bit with the bendy guys. After lunch, chickpea paste and embarrassment. You're asked to submit your own stealth invention. Some students bring silent arrows, cloud dust cloaks, or padded helmets that double as pillows. You present a small clay tube filled with dry mint leaves. When twisted, it releases a faint scent to distract opponents. No sound, just confusion. Athena accepts it. She doesn't smile, but she lets the owl blink. That's better than applause here. Mainstream fact. Ancient Greek warriors often used scent to identify enemy encampments. Smoke, fire, sweat. Your mint distraction idea. Probably too clever for history, but not impossible. That evening, the courtyard is lit by jars filled with fireflies. No torches, no flames, just little organic bulbs blinking quietly. You sit with your team, drinking warm barley tea from silent ladles. Someone raises a cup. You all nod instead of clinking. The tea tastes like rust and time and success. Athena stands beneath the olive tree and reads a passage from the scroll. Silence is not absence. It is presence with precision. You don't really understand it yet, but you're starting to feel its shape. You lie in bed later, clutching your olive. You whisper your mint plan to the ceiling. The wind doesn't answer, but it also doesn't disagree. In your dreams, you fight a battle in a library. Every blow is silent. Every dodge echoes only in thought. Your opponent, a giant made of bronze and parchment, you defeat him by blowing mint into his eyes. And somehow, that feels like progress. You wake to the scent of broth and bronze polish. Today's lesson, noise-proofing your equipment. Otherwise known as why does your helmet sound like a dinner bell when you walk? The training hall has transformed again. This time, rows of helmets, breastplates, greaves, and shields each modified, muffled, and mildly absurd line the walls. You're handed what looks like a standard Corinthian helmet, until you put it on and realize it's padded inside with soft sheep fleece. It smells like old sunshine and awkwardness. You try to speak, but the helmet swallows the sound like a loaf of bread stuffed in your mouth. Athena enters the hall, dragging a cart behind her. The wheels creak, just a little. She scowls. One of the assistants dives forward and oils them in real time. She begins. If your armor sings, your enemy dances, which doesn't exactly make sense, but everyone writes it down. Your first task is to walk in full armor modified for stealth across a narrow wooden platform with bowls of soup balanced on either end. The challenge, don't spill a drop and no clanking. If your greaves click, if your shield sighs, if your helmet whistles, soup's gone, dignity gone. Re-enrollment strongly suggested. You make it halfway across when your left knee pops like a distant cork. The bowl wobbles. You freeze. Your teammate catches the bowl. The owl statue on the ledge blinks twice. You finish the course. Barely. Soup intact. Ego. Medium rare. Mainstream fact. Some ancient soldiers stuffed linen or wool into their armor joints to reduce rattling. Historical records even mention quiet tunics worn under bronze breastplates to dull impact sound. It wasn't glamorized in art, but it was real battlefield science. Your next assignment is culinary. Wait, what? You're taken to the dining hall, which now looks like a very confused kitchen. The instructors hand out ladles, pots, and what appears to be a scroll made of dough. You are told to cook silently. That's it. That's the whole assignment. Someone boils lentils so gently the water doesn't ripple. Another simmers mushrooms like they're taming a small cloud. You chop onions with a stone knife padded in wool. Your fingers smell like victory and root vegetables. Athena walks through the kitchen in total silence, sampling soups with a straight face. She doesn't speak, but when she tastes yours, she pauses. She nods. That nod is worth more than applause. Fringe tidbit. There's a theory that some temples held echo feasts where the meal was prepared, served, and eaten without a single word. These meals were seen as sacred rituals of reflection, or maybe the priests were just tired of listening to each other chew. After lunch, you're fitted with a new helmet. This one has a small compartment near the temple. You ask what it's for. The instructor whispers, snacks. Turns out, many quiet warriors needed a way to store energy on the go. This school version, you can carry dried figs, almonds, even tiny scrolls of motivational quotes. Yours reads, "Even silence needs a sandwich." Athena introduces today's final drill, Silent March with Echo Soup. You and your cohort must march through the marble corridors wearing full muffled gear, while balancing a bowl of broth on your forearms. The broth is thick, heavy, slightly spicy, and most importantly, served in bowls that sing if tipped. Some sadists clearly thought that was funny. One student sneezes mid-step. The bowl sings. The owl statue down the hall makes a noise like a disgruntled coin purse. You hold your breath, walk with your knees bent like you're impersonating a silent goat, and make it all the way to the end without a single slosh. You've never been more proud to carry soup. Mainstream fact. Ancient Greeks often carried food with them into battle, tucked into pouches or under tunics. Lentils, bread, cheese. Stew wasn't common, but soup was a sacred thing, often tied to temple offerings and soldierly comfort. Echo soup, probably not real, but definitely flavorful. That night, Athena gives a small lecture, very small, 7 words. Silence is not what you remove, it's what you keep. You stare at your soup bowl, empty now but still resonant in your memory. The echo of a careful meal, shared without sound, still lingers. Your cot smells faintly of barley and sweat. The owl statue outside your room has turned slightly. You think it's watching you in approval, or maybe just because someone bumped it during soup practice. In your dreams, you march through clouds wearing muffled armor, soup bowl on your head, and an entire chorus of doves whispering encouragement with wing flaps. It doesn't make sense, but it feels like triumph. And tomorrow, they're going to let you duel. The sun doesn't rise in Athena's school. It tiptoes. You wake up not because of any sound, but because the air itself changes, the way it does when dawn is too polite to knock. Today, your scroll reads, "The watcher judges not with words, but blinks," which can only mean one thing. You're about to be graded by the statue, the stone owl, perched high above the training hall, has been there since your first day, carved from the same marble as the temple's steps. Its eyes seem to follow you wherever you go. Until now, it's been mostly passive blinking occasionally to express judgment, approval, or divine sarcasm. But today, it awakens. You and the others are led into the silent hall. A single line of sand trails from the entrance to the center of the room, where a stone disc waits smooth. Cool, intimidating. Athena sits cross-legged at the edge of the room, eyes closed, arms folded, not sleeping, just vibrating at a higher level of focus. One by one, students are called to perform. The owl watches. If it blinks once, perfect. If it blinks twice, acceptable. 3 times. You're getting soup duty for a week. First up, a girl who moves like wind through silk. She weaves between invisible opponents, her feet brushing the ground like a whisper. The owl blinks once. Everyone exhales silently. Next, a boy who tries too hard. He throws a spear a bit too fast. It almost whistles. 2 blinks. Then it's your turn. You step onto the stone disc. Every muscle is already trembling, not from fear, but from the tension of having nothing to hide behind. No sound, no crowd, no chaos, just a mute stage and a statue that never yawns. Your task, replicate the 3 forms of stealth. Form 1, the reed bend. You must duck, pivot, and rise again without disturbing the sand around the stone. Form 2, the feather grip. Pick up your spear, rotate, and freeze in battle stance without a single finger squeak. Form 3, the echo slip. Advance 3 paces and stop just before a drop of water lands from a hanging leaf above. You begin. Your foot rolls smoothly across the stone. No scuff, no scrape. Your knees bend, no pop. You grab your spear, soft leather grip, goat hide wrap, and slide into the final stance as the water drop falls. But misses your head by a breath. You didn't dodge. You timed it. The owl blinks once. Athena raises one brow. You don't dare smile, but inside, you are fireworks made of feathers. Mainstream fact. In many Athenian temples, owl statues weren't just symbolic, they were tools of teaching. Some were built with internal mechanisms, water clocks, balance triggers to blink or shift at intervals. Whether Athena's owl was ever mechanical is debated, but some believe it was operated by temple servants hidden behind walls. Fringe tidbit. There's a theory that one Athenian military school trained its elite in front of blindfolded elders who only listened to the combat to grade it. They'd rate warriors based on sound signature, which was either genius or a practical joke that got way out of hand. Back in the hall, your peers perform. Some are graceful, some are noisy disasters. One student trips over their own scroll. The owl stares blankly, doesn't even blink. That's not ideal. At the end, Athena finally speaks. The eye sees what the ear forgets. No one is sure what she means, but everyone nods like they do. After lunch, cold figs, warm barley. You're led to a smaller chamber, half storage, half shrine. The walls are covered in ancient diagrams of silent formations, illustrated with tiny hoplites drawn like paper dolls. Tiptoeing through cities and enemy camps, you spot a curious scroll labeled Stealth Campaign. Chios Incident. Historians still argue about that one. Some say Athena led a team of silent warriors across Chios, stealing enemy plans using nothing but smoke, sand, and owl calls. Others think it was just a bard's drunken retelling of a failed poetry recital. Either way, it's inspirational. You and a small group are tasked with replicating the strategy using chess pieces on a sound-sensitive board. If your movement makes noise, the board resets. One student gets reset 7 times. You make it through with only one reset caused by a fig seed in your sandal. You curse that fig in your soul. That night, a reward arrives. Your first private training time. You're allowed into the whisper room, a chamber built so acoustically perfect that even your thoughts feel louder. Every breath sounds like a confession. Every movement echoes into itself and then disappears. There, you practice alone. No owl, no Athena, just you, your breath, your spear, and the idea that silence might not be the absence of noise, but the presence of intention. You leave feeling like you've shed a layer of yourself. In your cot, you find a slip of parchment tucked beneath your blanket. Not all warriors need to shout, some need only be heard by fate. You sleep with your scrolls curled beside you, and dream of a battlefield made entirely of paper. Every step must be a whisper, or the page tears beneath you. You never fall. There's a thunderclap, which is weird, because there's no storm. You jolt awake, heart thudding. Not just you, every student in the school sits up, startled. Even Dennis the crane honks an alarm from his perch near the olive tree. Somewhere above, the sky simmers in silence. But that sound, it wasn't weather. It was Ares. He's arrived. You hear him before you see him, because he's doing everything loud on purpose. His boots stomp like he's challenging the concept of floors, his laugh booming, theatrical, with just a hint of, "I lost a bet, and I'm here to ruin the vibe," bounces off every surface in the temple. The doors burst open, literally. The hinges give up and flee. In walks the god of war himself, clad in a bronze breastplate so polished it flashes sunlight into people's eyes from a torchlit room. On his belt, a rack of clanging weapons. In his hand, symbols, actual symbols. Athena, he bellows, drawing out every syllable like an opera villain. Where's your little choir of mimes? Athena, who has been sitting peacefully under a fig tree with a cup of mint water, doesn't even flinch. She gestures with one finger. The owl blinks 3 times. A formal groan. Ares claps the cymbals. Someone in the back winces audibly. He marches into the courtyard like a one-man parade. Dust rises. Scrolls tremble. You could swear a grape falls off a vine 2 courtyards away just to escape the racket. Historians still argue about the so-called confrontation at the quiet school. Some say it's metaphorical, a philosophical clash between brute force and strategic silence. Others believe it was real, a diplomatic visit from Ares to Athena's private academy after complaints from Olympus that her warriors were too sneaky. A few suspect it was all a divine prank. Fringe tidbit. There's one old vase that shows Ares dressed as a flute, being held upside down by an annoyed Athena. Scholars don't agree on the context. Personally, you think it's foreshadowing? Athena rises, doesn't speak, just walks straight up to her boisterous brother and raises one eyebrow. It says everything. Do not. But Ares is here for show and tell. I brought firecrackers. He grins, pulling a satchel of small clay pots from his hip. Let's teach your students the joy of noise. He lights one. It pops. Students dive for cover like startled cats. A bowl of soup is tragically lost. Dennis flaps his wings in horror. Athena doesn't blink. Instead, she lifts her hand and mutters a phrase you barely hear. Let silence remind him. Suddenly, every sound from Ares' gear, every clang, stomp, whistle, and word stays trapped in a shimmering bubble around him. He's still moving his mouth, stomping around like a toddler in a tantrum. But we hear nothing, not even the cymbals. He is, for the first time in mythological history, completely mute. You've never seen a god look so confused. He tries to protest, throwing wild gestures. Athena hands him a scroll and a chalkboard. He furiously scribbles, "Unfair. I was adding drama." Athena shrugs and passes him a pair of padded slippers. Welcome to class. Mainstream fact. In certain mystery schools of Greece, especially, Eleusinian rites visitors had to undergo silence rituals before being admitted. Even gods were said to respect the rules when present, participating quietly in mortal ceremonies. Whether Ares ever played along? Debatable, but certainly hilarious to imagine. You all proceed with the day's training as though a silent, furious war god isn't pacing next to you miming explosions and chest beating. Your drill involves infiltrating a simulated enemy camp, complete with guards who carry wooden spoons and listen for whispers. Ares tries to help, miming, just punch them. But he's ignored like a loud uncle at a chess tournament. Your partner is the barefoot librarian. He moves so smoothly you forget he's there. Together, you sneak past the guards, slip through the rope barricades, and retrieve the objective, a satchel of olives. No one hears you. You win. Later, during afternoon tea, Ares finally figures out the mime for "I give up." Athena releases the silence spell, and his voice returns like a breaking dam. Fine. He huffs. Your school's creepy and effective. He stomps off this time noticeably quieter, and as he leaves, a tiny scroll falls from his belt. You pick it up. It reads, "War is a song. Yours just happens to be played in the libraries." You keep it. That night, Athena speaks. Loud power breaks walls. Quiet power moves through them. You're starting to believe that. You sit under the fig tree, helmet by your side, watching fireflies float above the still pond. The owl doesn't blink tonight. Maybe that's a good thing. In your dreams, Ares returns not as an enemy, but as a reluctant student, trying to sneak across a room while stepping on grapes. It's ridiculous, but he tries, and in the dream, he's not so loud anymore. There's a door in the temple that never opens, or rather it never opens loudly. It's flush with the wall, barely noticeable, carved from olive wood, and framed by silence itself. But today, it slides open with a sound like a breath exhaled through parchment. Inside is the Library of Quiet Conquests. You're told only the top-performing students get access. The door itself seems to scan you, perhaps judging your footsteps, your scroll work, or your ability to eat figs without smacking. Whatever the metric, you pass. The air inside the library is cool and dry, tinged with olive oil and charcoal ink. The scrolls here are different. They aren't dramatic war stories or epics sung by lyre-wielding bards. These are small victories. One scroll describes a soldier who disabled an entire watchtower by replacing the guard dogs with unusually passive sheep. Another recounts a whisper campaign that led to the collapse of a pirate fleet purely by sending confusing letters to the wrong ports. But the one that truly captures your attention, the Moth Siege of Carpathos. You unroll the scroll carefully. The ink is faded, but the story is intact. Carpathos, a walled city known for its thunderous bells and dramatic declarations, once fell not to swords or arrows, but to a quiet night filled with thousands of moths. Athenian strategists, unable to breach the gates with force, released hundreds of woven baskets filled with silk moths near the city's torch-lit perimeter. The moths were drawn to the flames, disrupting visibility and causing the guards to flail, shout, and extinguish every light source in panic. In the confusion, trained quiet warriors scaled the walls in shadow and opened the gates. It sounds absurd, and yet, strangely plausible. Historians still argue whether it was a metaphor for confusion or an actual event. One fragment of pottery from the region does depict a torchbearer smacking himself in the face while surrounded by fluttering wings. Fringe tidbit. In some rural festivals, Greeks used moths to cleanse sacred spaces, believing they carried away unspoken thoughts. So releasing them during battle might have felt both tactical and spiritual, or maybe just annoying. You copy down the scroll's layout, noting the timing cues, wind measurements, and torch angles. This isn't just a prank, it's a blueprint. Athena walks into the library. She says nothing. She stands beside you, reading over your shoulder. After a long pause, she murmurs. Light blinds more than it reveals. Then, she's gone again like candle smoke curling under a door. You spend hours in that library, reading about whisper walls, stealthy messengers who memorized entire war maps, and quiet formations that tricked enemy archers into firing at decoys made of bundled reeds. Each story less about bloodshed, more about precision, patience, timing. You emerge at dusk. The world outside feels louder now. Cicadas buzz. Students murmur during dinner prep. Someone accidentally drops a spoon and looks genuinely mortified. You look down at your notes. You've sketched a new kind of tactic, the lantern swap, based on one scroll where warriors replaced an enemy's signal lanterns with identical-looking ones that changed color when viewed at a distance, misleading their cavalry reinforcements into retreating before the battle even started. Athena glides by your table. You don't look up. You hear the ghost of a nod. That's enough. Mainstream fact. Ancient military deception was real, and often weird. The Greeks loved misdirection, false campfires, decoy statues, even polished shields reflecting sunlight to simulate larger armies. War wasn't just brute force, it was theater. Later that evening, you find a small scroll under your cot. It has no title. Inside, only this: noise wins battles, silence wins wars. You whisper the words to yourself. They feel heavier than bronze. You fall asleep early, but your dreams are vivid. An entire battle fought inside a library. Warriors tiptoe across scroll shelves, swords wrapped in felt. Enemies distracted by phantom pages turning themselves. You win by replacing their commander's helmet with a bread bowl. You wake up smiling, because today, you know that knowledge isn't just power, it's power wrapped in wool. Your instructions today come in the form of a drawing. No words, just a goat. A goat grazing peacefully beneath an olive tree. You're told nothing else. One instructor hands you a scroll titled, "Observe, but do not disturb," then gestures towards the temple's outer grove. Somewhere out there is a sacred goat named Makarios, known across mythological margins for being particularly skittish, suspicious, and vocal. Your assignment: follow him for 1 hour. Don't make him bleat. The catch: Makarios has been trained by temple guards to identify stalkers. He's basically a four-legged paranoia machine. He's also wearing what looks like a little brass medallion with Athena's crest on it. Of course he is. You enter the grove barefoot, your soft slippers tucked under your tunic. The trees whisper above. The ground is soft with leaves and patches of dry moss. You spot Makarios by the third olive row, nibbling at weeds and swatting flies with his tail. You crouch. He looks up. You freeze. The staring contest begins. Historians still argue whether the sacred goat trials were metaphorical teachings on patience or actual tests at warrior academies. Some believe goats were sacred to Athena due to their agility and awareness, making them perfect for training perception. Others just think some ancient instructor really hated loud noises and loved goats. Makarios turns, walks left. You follow, carefully timing your steps to match his hoof falls so he doesn't notice the rhythm shift. It's a weird kind of dance. He stops to chew on a leaf. You duck behind a bush. A twig cracks. His ear flicks. He doesn't bleat. You inch forward, maintaining a respectful 5-pace distance. The scroll said no closer than 3. Any nearer, and he'll unleash what students call the scream of judgment, a bleat so powerful it triggers automatic failure and owl side-eye. Fringe tidbit. There's a folk story about a warrior who disguised himself as a goat for 2 weeks to spy on enemy plans. It's unclear whether he succeeded or was just very lonely. Makarios tests you. He takes an unexpected sprint across the grove. You almost trip. You stop. He pauses behind a fig tree, waiting to see if you crash into a branch. You don't. Instead, you sit cross-legged on a patch of moss and pretend you were never following him at all. Makarios chews, looks left, looks right, then settles down. Victory. Maybe. Or maybe he's just bored of judging you. After an hour, a low whistle sounds from the temple wall. Your cue to return. You step back lightly, leaving no crushed grass, no broken twigs. You glance back. Makarios doesn't even lift his head. You've passed. Mainstream fact. Greek warriors were often trained in animal tracking not for hunting, but to study patterns of movement, behavior, and rhythm. Goats, dogs, birds each offered a lesson in reaction. Some philosophers even recommended imitating animals to learn stillness. Plato probably never followed a goat, but he would have respected it. Back in the temple, the scroll keeper meets you at the door. She says nothing, just hands you a fig and taps your temple twice with a reed pen. You're not sure what it means, but you feel honored. You're invited to record your experience on a fresh scroll. You begin. Makarios taught me that silence is not just restraint, it's rhythm. Athena later reads the scroll in the courtyard. She doesn't comment, but Makarios is nearby. You could swear he nods. You end the day with a new drill. Mimic the goat. Yes, really. Each student must reenact Makarios's grazing patterns, posture, and flight instincts without using sound. It's more difficult than it sounds. You learn a lot about pacing, about head angles, about when to bolt and when to just blink with menace. Someone takes it too far and tries to chew on their tunic. The owl blinks twice. Message received. That night, the stars are unusually bright. A gentle wind curls through the corridor. Somewhere beyond the grove, Makarios lets out a contented bleat, not a judgmental one, just acknowledgement. You fall asleep to the memory of hoofbeats on dry earth, and the feeling that sometimes the best lessons don't come from gods, or scrolls, or statues. Sometimes they come from goats. The courtyard is silent, but charged like a deep breath held across 20 chests. Today is the Whisper Duel Tournament. You've trained for this since day one. The silent strikes, the soft landings, the slowed-down ballet of stealth combat. Now it's time to put it all together. No prizes, no medals, just the respect of Athena's owl, and maybe the privilege of skipping dish duty for a week. The duels will be fought under moonlight, on sand brushed so fine it registers the movement of air. The rules: no talking, no stomping, no sudden movements that kick up dust. And above all, the judges must never hear you. The judges, by the way, are perched on the roof. 2 temple cats known for their alarming sensitivity to sound and their utter indifference to authority. If either of them flinches, hisses, or jumps off the ledge, you're disqualified. Your opponent, Alexios, the one with the absurdly soft footfalls and a spear grip that doesn't even rustle reeds. Rumor has it he once completed an entire drill session while sleepwalking, and still scored perfect silence. You enter the circle, bowing deeply. He mirrors you. The cats blink. The owl blinks once. A good omen. The duel begins. You circle each other slowly, sand whispering under your feet. Every step is a thought, every breath a gamble. He strikes first, a graceful, near-invisible jab meant to test your reactions. You dodge with a shoulder roll that barely stirs your tunic. No sound. The crowd around you doesn't cheer. Cheering would be an expulsion-level offense. Instead, everyone shifts their weight in admiration. Alexios attempts a low sweep. You leap not high, just enough to drift above the move and land in a crouch. One grain of sand flicks upward. A cat perks its ears. You freeze. The grain lands. The cat settles back down. You continue. Mainstream fact. Some ancient Greek athletes and soldiers were trained in shadow dueling, where victory came not from contact, but from unbalancing the opponent through motion and posture alone. It wasn't sport. It was strategy designed to teach anticipation, restraint, and presence. Fringe tidbit. A myth tells of a Spartan who refused to wear armor because the wind betrays bronze. He's said to have fought wrapped in silk soaked in river water, which dried noiselessly and confused everyone. Historians debate if he was a real figure or just a story told to terrify blacksmiths. Back in the duel, your opponent spins. You step forward not with force, but with quiet timing. You don't strike, you suggest the strike. He leans back. His foot catches an uneven patch of sand, just slightly. He shifts weight, arms windmilling softly, nearly silent, but a bracelet hidden under his sleeve tinks against his wrist. Everyone hears it. It's the tiniest sound in the universe, but it echoes through the courtyard like a choir of gasps that never leave mouths. The cats both turn. Athena stands from her seat. She doesn't speak. She simply raises a ribbon and ties it around your wrist. Victory. The crowd does not erupt. Instead, they bow one slow movement, held, then released. It's more meaningful than applause. You and Alexios nod to each other. No hard feelings. In this school, defeat is just delayed silence. That night, the duels continue. Some matches end in draws. Some end when a single toe scuffs the ground. One ends because someone sneezed mid-lunge, which causes both cats to bolt, the owl to blink rapidly, and the audience to collectively inhale like they're watching a very quiet opera. Your ribbon earns you a place in the silent archives. A hidden scroll room only champions may enter. Inside, you find poems written in invisible ink, visible only under moonlight. One reads, "To move without sound is to speak through stillness." Another, "A whisper delivered with purpose outlasts a scream." You copy both onto your forearm with a wax stylus. Just to remember, Athena passes by you in the hallway that night. For the first time, she speaks to you directly. You are learning to hear with your feet. You don't reply. You don't need to. Later, you sit beneath the olive tree, your ribbon flapping gently in the wind. You close your eyes and replay the duel not for glory, but for rhythm. And in your dreams, you duel again not with Alexios, but with your shadow. It's fast, fluid, and completely silent. This time, you both win. Tonight, the courtyard feels strange. There's a ripple in the silence. You and the other students gather at dusk, summoned by a message carved into your scroll rack. Hermes has arrived. Be alert and not too trusting. That alone is enough to make you sit straighter. Because Hermes, messenger of the gods, patron of liars, sneakers, and very fast exits, is unpredictable. He appears wherever he likes, says whatever he wants, and usually leaves with something he didn't come with. And tonight, he wants to compete. Athena stands at the center of the courtyard, arms folded, looking very tired of her brother's nonsense. Beside her, Hermes, barefoot, wearing a tunic that shimmers like heat waves, grinning like a child who brought candy to a spinach school. "I've come," he says, "to win the whisper duel." "You can't," Athena replies flatly. "I'm already registered." He beams, holding up a scroll signed in. Is that cloud ink? The owl blinks twice. The cats blink once. Dennis the crane lets out a low honk and walks away. He knows what's coming. Hermes is paired against the reigning student from last year, Thalia, the silent archivist. She moves like smoke in a closed jar. Hermes, of course, moves like a rumor chasing its own tail. The duel begins. Thalia bows, draws her spear, and takes the stance of olive root stillness. A posture so quiet it's been known to calm goats at 30 paces. Hermes waves, then promptly vanishes. Literally, for a moment. The courtyard is empty. Then, a faint tap. The owl's eyes flick left. A slipper appears hovering, followed by another. Then Hermes reappears mid-air, wearing invisible stilts made of enchanted reed and moonlight. He lands silently, strikes nothing, smiles smugly. Thalia blinks, then flips her spear. She doesn't strike him. She steps behind him and slowly raises one hand to the sky. Hermes turns just in time to realize the cats are both staring directly at him. He frowns. A bead of sweat falls, hits the ground. One very quiet plop, but it's enough. The owl blinks 3 times. Athena doesn't even try to hide her smirk. "You lose," she says, and Hermes pouts like someone who tried to steal candy from a silent monastery. Historians still argue whether this duel actually happened. Some say it was a symbolic warning about ego and overconfidence. Others believe it was a real visit, Hermes testing the limits of divine etiquette, finding that even he couldn't out-stealth discipline. Fringe tidbit. A faded mural in a ruined temple in Sunion shows a winged figure, likely Hermes caught in a net labeled Hubris. Scholars think it was painted by students who really loved that duel. Hermes, of course, doesn't leave without theatrics. He awards Thalia a fake crown made of stardust and scroll paper, tells everyone he let her win, and gifts a student you a pouch of something that smells like speed and burnt honey. It turns out to be foot dust, a mythical powder that, when blown onto sandals, renders your steps noiseless for 1 hour. A rare and powerful gift. You're too afraid to use it yet. You tuck it under your pillow like a talisman. That night, Hermes leaves running backward across the courtyard and vanishing through a scroll rack that didn't exist before. Athena sighs, then says, quietly, speed breaks rhythm, precision breaks silence. Be neither. You nod, though you're not sure you understand. You dream of flying not with wings, but with steps so soft they lift you. You land on a scroll. It doesn't bend. Hermes is there too, clapping without sound, mouthing the words, not bad, kid. Mainstream fact. Hermes was often portrayed as a trickster, yes, but also a guide through boundaries between worlds, between noise and silence. He wasn't chaos, he was the messenger between chaos and order. Tonight, you remember that, and you begin to wonder, maybe even the loudest gods can teach quiet lessons if you know how to listen between the echoes. Today, the library doors are locked, which is odd. They're never locked. Not even when that one student got stuck inside during a scroll avalanche and had to read her way out. But now there's a sign pinned to the door, occupied by a minotaur. You think it's a joke until you hear the snuffling. It's low, grumbly, and coming from the far end of the temple where the storage rooms rarely get used. Someone whispers, he asked to join the school. You follow the sound down a corridor you didn't know existed, past the olive oil archives, beyond the room of experimental cloaks and into a wide space lit by small jars of glowing mushrooms. And there, hunched over a pile of scrolls, is a minotaur. But not the minotaur, not the legendary snarling beast of labyrinths and sacrificial drama. No, this one wears glasses and reading gloves. His name is Milos. He's massive, yes, horned, muscled, shaggy, but there's something endearingly awkward about him. He holds a tiny teacup between 2 fingers and flips scrolls with a delicacy that defies everything you've ever heard about him. Also, he's got a pouch of dried mango slices tucked into his belt. Hi, he says, quietly. I'm here for silent snacking certification. You blink. He nods. I used to chew loud. I'm working on it. Athena appears behind you, completely unsurprised. Milos will teach the afternoon class. She says simply, you are his assistants. The class? Strategic quiet chewing. It sounds silly, until you're halfway through a fig and realize the way you bite creates a distinct squelch. Milos teaches you to roll food against your tongue, to let dried fruit melt slightly before biting, to breathe through your nose during tough chew resistance. It's weird and genius. You're handed a scroll labeled Noise Profile. Pomegranate seeds. It includes diagrams. Mainstream fact. In some Greek mystery cults, initiates were forbidden to eat certain foods because of the sounds they made. Pomegranates, apples, and hard bread were all subject to noise-based restrictions during meditation. Eat in silence wasn't just metaphorical, it was literal practice. Fringe tidbit. One comedic playwright once penned a scene where a minotaur infiltrated a temple by pretending to be a mute librarian. No one noticed until he accidentally sneezed into a papyrus pile and launched 100 scrolls into the air. Milos turns out to be a surprisingly good teacher. He even invents a game, Silent Snack Relay. 2 teams, 1 fig each. You must pass the fruit across the courtyard using only chin, shoulder, and very slow walking. If it falls, owl blink. If you drop it and make a noise, owl frown. You and Milos win your round with ease. Later, during wind meditation, Milos asks quietly, do you think people like me can be warriors of silence? You nod, then gesture to the scroll he wrote. His handwriting is impeccable, His notes, sharp, observant, and insightful. He's already more disciplined than most students. Athena approaches with a stone bowl. Inside, olives and one glimmering coin. She gives it to Milos. "You passed," she says. He blinks, slow, grateful, and says nothing. Not because he has to, but because he understands now. That evening, the cats curl up beside him. The owl watches him as he reads, and you find yourself sitting near the fire with your fellow students, eating figs in complete, synchronized quiet. Milos hands out little cubes of cheese wrapped in cloth and teaches you how to unwrap them in slow motion. No creaks, no squeaks, just the soft, reverent silence of a group who now knows that even snacking can be a kind of worship. You fall asleep that night, full, not just with food, but with the feeling that strength isn't always about fighting or silence. Sometimes, it's just about changing. And maybe, just maybe, this school was built for creatures of all kinds, even former labyrinth monsters. Especially them. The sky grumbles. Not thunder at least. Not at first. Just that low, slow exhale of a storm still deciding whether it wants to ruin everyone's day. You wake up with your blanket curled around your ears, already sensing what's coming. Graduation, not with trumpets or wreaths, not with parents in the stands or gods tossing laurel leaves from Olympus. No, here at Athena's school, graduation happens in a thunderstorm and nobody claps. The scroll at the foot of your cot is blank, but damp. A single olive pit rests on top. You take it, dry it on your sleeve, and walk into the courtyard. The sand has been smoothed again. The firefly jars are gone. In their place, a row of olive branches laid out in a spiral. Athena waits at the center, soaked from the drizzle but unbothered. The owl sits on her shoulder. The cats are dry how and watching from the rafters like bored royalty. Each student will walk the spiral path. No speech, no recitation. Just one final demonstration. Move from entrance to center without a single sound. In wind, in wetness, with the world listening. One by one, your classmates walk the spiral. Some succeed soft steps, even breath. Some falter foot slips, toe splashes. One student hiccups halfway and turns back around before even reaching Athena. She nods anyway. Your turn. You step forward. The rain is steady now, not violent, just persistent. Your slippers are soaked. Your tunic clings to your spine, and the spiral path seems longer than ever. You exhale and begin. Heel, toe, wait. Balanced. Don't shift too quickly. Don't fight the wind, use it. Let it cover you. You think about everything Makarios the goat, the owl's blink, Alexios's silent sweep, the scroll about moths and torches, Milos, and the sacred art of non-crunchy cheese. You reach the center. Athena holds out a scroll, tied with a wet ribbon. You take it. She doesn't speak, but the owl blinks once, and that's more than enough. Mainstream fact. Ancient Greek mystery schools had no official graduation. Instead, students were often dismissed individually after a final act of devotion, silent walks, private tests, or a symbolic gesture like lighting a lamp or carrying sacred water without spilling. Ritual mattered more than celebration. Fringe tidbit. One forgotten myth mentions a goddess who watched mortals walk circles in the rain for 7 days straight. Only those who finished dry-footed were granted wisdom. Nobody ever did. But they always learned something anyway. As more students graduate, the rain intensifies. Athena doesn't move. Not when lightning flashes in the distance. Not when thunder finally speaks. She simply raises her hand once, and a massive linen sheet unfurls over the courtyard, pinned in place by ropes and balance. The sound of rain softens instantly. It becomes a hush, a lullaby. She steps forward with a small bowl. Inside, dried figs, olive leaves, and scroll fragments. She places one item in each student's hand. Yours, a fig. But it's carved with a tiny spiral. You hold it like a relic. The courtyard ceremony ends without fanfare. Everyone disperses back into the temple, dripping and whispering and pretending not to smile. You reach your room and find a new robe folded neatly on your cot, embroidered on the sleeve, a single stitched owl eye, Athena's way of saying, "You're one of us now." You sit by the window, watching droplets chase each other across the sill. The wind whistles through the grove, but even it seems softer now, more respectful, as if it, too, has learned to listen. You fall asleep not in silence, but in softness. There is a difference, and you understand it now. In your dream, you walk across a lake made of glass. Each step leaves no ripple. Above you, clouds clap gently, but only in encouragement. You don't speak. You don't need to. The sun returns like it overslept and is trying not to be noticed. You rise before it anyway, already dressed. Your slippers dry for the first time in days. There's a scroll on your door. No seal, no ink, just a gentle scent of olive bark and mint. You unfold it. Walk home. No escort. No noise. The world is your final classroom. You blink. You knew this day would come. You just didn't expect it to feel like this soft, uncertain, a little like being told you graduated from a dream. You step outside. The courtyard is empty. Athena isn't there. The owl is gone. Even Dennis is missing, possibly off starting his own silent bird dojo. You carry your ribbon, your scroll, your pouch of foot dust, and your years of silence folded neatly behind your eyes. No goodbyes, just the path. It's not marked, not paved. It curls between olive trees and broken bottoms, into the low hills where cicadas hum like far-off drums, and the earth is still wet from last night's rain. Each step is soft, not just from training, but because the world has quieted for you. You pass through a grove. A goat watches from behind a bush. You nod. He blinks. You pass a group of travelers debating loudly about which road leads to Athens. You don't say a word, just place a stone on the correct path and keep walking. You reach a small village where someone drops a pot and curses the sky. You flinch, not because of the sound, but because you can now feel how unnecessary it is. Mainstream fact. Some ancient Greek initiates were sent on return pilgrimages, walking home without speaking. Guided only by memory and ritual, they'd be watched not to test them, but to witness what kind of silence they had brought back with them. Fringe tidbit. A surviving riddle scroll from Delos reads, "What walks quietly, hears loudly, and only speaks when the wind stops." Scholars argue whether it refers to an owl, a priest, or a very tired graduate. You reach a ridge. Below, the city. Banners flap. Merchants shout. Children laugh. All the beautiful noise of ordinary life. You walk through it not as a stranger, not as a ghost, but as something else. A presence. A pause. Someone bumps your shoulder. You don't react. They apologize. You nod. A child drops a toy. You catch it. Place it down softly. No words, but everything understood. You reach your old home. A neighbor spots you. "Where have you been?" she asks. You look different. You smile. That's answer enough. You unpack that night. Your scrolls, your sandals, your still unopened foot dust. You hang your owl-stitched robe near the window, where the breeze can touch it. You sit on your roof, watching stars blink above the olive hills. You think, "I walked in silence, but I came back with echoes." And slowly, softly, the world begins to listen to you, too. Now, take one last breath. Hold it, and let it go slowly, like a scroll unrolling in candlelight. The story is over, but the stillness lingers. Your feet are no longer on marble or moss, they're tucked under the sheets. Your fingers don't grip a spear. They rest softly on the blanket's edge. The owl doesn't blink anymore. It sleeps with you now. You are not in a school anymore. You're in a room shaped like quiet, and your breath slow, steady, almost invisible is the only whisper that matters. Let your shoulders drop. Let your jaw loosen. Even your eyes can rest, half-lidded, as if watching a dream from the outside. The footsteps fade. The grove grows darker. The sand flattens itself without help. You leave no trace behind, except peace. Athena is far away now, but her words still float somewhere in your chest, as soft as wool and twice as warm. Silence is not emptiness. It is what stays after the noise is done. So tonight, let it stay. Let the quiet wrap around you like your old training robe. You're safe. You've learned everything, and you've returned with something far more rare than glory, stillness. Now drift. Let go. Let sleep walk beside you, and dream. Without a sound,